Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Prague Space Security Guest Lecture. We're delighted you could join us online tonight. My name is Jana Robinson. I'm Managing Director of the Prague Security Studies Institute. A key part of PSSI's mission is to identify and illuminate threats to the transatlantic alliance and like-minded partners worldwide, particularly in the economic and financial and space domains, as well as educate the next generation of security-minded practitioners. In our Space Security Guest Lecture series, we bring leading experts and senior practitioners to explore the latest developments and trends shaping the space domain of tomorrow. Just a quick logistical note, you're welcome to submit questions at any point during the lecture using the Q&A or the chat function. It is a great pleasure to welcome you to this evening's lecture titled The EU Space Program in Action. Against rising demand for space-based services and a requirement to protect space infrastructure, the European Union Agency for the Space Program, EUSPA, is playing an increasingly central role in Europe's economy, governance, and security. From Galileo, EGNOS, GovSatcom, IRIS² to the EU space surveillance and tracking, these capabilities are here to deliver value for the European citizens, from faster disaster response and satellite-enabled emergency services to improved infrastructure monitoring and more efficient public administration. I'm especially delighted to be joined by my former colleague and friend, Christina Giannopapa, head of the Office of the Executive Director of the European Union Agency for the Space Program, head of communications for the agency, as well as president of Women in Aerospace Europe. Dr. Giannopapa will address the historic evolution of EU space competence, as well as investment and governance required to sustain and advance Europe's space systems, and how space strengthens Europe's role as a competitive and reliable actor in today's dynamic global environment. Christina, it's a pleasure to have you here tonight. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Jana, thank you very much for the kind invitation. It's a pleasure to be with PSSI, and it's a pleasure to talk about the European Space Program in action and how we deliver through services for the European Union and its citizens. So let me start my presentation today by providing you just a question to say, what is the role of space today to our society and economy? What would actually happen if we would switch off satellites for one day? The answer is that it will be complete chaos. We're using in our day-to-day activities space, be it when we take money from a bank and we need a timestamp, be it when we take the plane, when we're driving our car, when we're watching live football matches. So space has become, over the past couple of years, an indispensable part of our everyday lives. And in particularly also in the area of security, we also have seen how space defines the importance of basically of the activities that are taking place, but also in agriculture and forestry, in health, in mobility, in development, in energy, in absolutely everything we do. And as we go through the presentation today, I will give also some examples more concretely. Has this been exactly like that throughout the history of space? The answer is no. When first space started, it was with the race between the United States and Russia, was about prestige and military technological development. But as years passed by, then other things became important: the development of the skills, the space application, the development of expertise. And then as time also further passed by, the independent access to space became also important, and the role of applications was also there and became less the military activities. And if we were going to draw another diagram, because this is relatively from a couple of years ago, if we are going to draw another diagram now, we will see that the developed dedicated military technologies is also picking up again, and the importance of independent access to space is also very important. So the history of space has been changing. But when we talk about the space economy, it's very broad. And also for us in Europe, space is there to deliver services and deliver applications. This means that when we look at the simplified economy chain, we have what we typically call as the upstream on the left-hand side, where we talk about the R&D centers, the manufacturers, the operators, building the actual satellites and the launchers and operating. And then we have the downstream on the right-hand side, which is the ones which actually provide value to the users. They are the ones which integrate the data. They're the ones which actually analyze the data and provide information. They do the service provision. And this is a much bigger part in the entire economy of space. Now, the EU, since the history of space has been changing, also the engagement of the European Union in space activities has been changing. And we can say that there are two distinct periods: the period in the EU before the Lisbon Treaty and the period in the Union after the Lisbon Treaty. So before the Lisbon Treaty, then we have seen the developments of space in Europe through the European Union Agency for the Space Program, through ESA, which is an international intergovernmental organization. And in particularly in 2004, the Union made an agreement with the European Space Agency and started creating and looking on the work of space, and in particularly developing Europe's navigation system for European autonomy, the Galileo program, and which is for navigation, and also for Earth observation, the so-called at that time GMES, which today it's called Copernicus, and it is the eyes of Europe in space looking down on Earth. So this was before the Lisbon Treaty. And then as we see in this, there are a number of different papers which took place with the framework agreement of ESA. Then they started the so-called Space Council dialogues between the Union and the European Space Agency. And we are arriving in December 2009 with the Lisbon Treaty taking into effect, and in particularly Article 108.9. And in the Lisbon Treaty, Article 108.9 says specific things for the Union and space. First, it talks about promoting the scientific and technical progress and industrial competitiveness, and also to use space for implementation of Union policies and to draw up eventually a European space policy. It also talks about establishing the necessary measures and which will take the form of a European space program. And regarding the European Space Agency, which was very active till the time, and still is, to create appropriate relations with the European Space Agency. So this Article 108.9 is the basis for the further engagement of the Union into the space activities. And since that, in terms of building a policy, building a strategy, building a space program, we have a number of activities on a step-by-step approach the Union has been taking in order to arrive in 2021, where the so-called space regulation was new at that time. Of course, it's not new anymore of 2021. It did two things. It created the space program as it was pre-announced in the Lisbon Treaty, and it also created the European Union Agency for the space program as the agency to engage with the space program and support the Union into the space activities. I would like also, in terms of the legal basis of it, to highlight also in 2021 a particular council decision, the council decision CD698, which provides particular roles and establishments regarding the engagement of the EU space components that are there. And I will tell you in more detail what these are and how they relate. And these council decisions aid at ensuring a coordinated and effective response to security threats, which might impact the critical space infrastructures of the Union. This means that when a Union infrastructure regarding space is threatened, then this article is triggered. And it is not a secret that this has already been triggered with the war in Ukraine. Now, this also in terms of more security-related space activities, there are a number of documents since 2021 that have been published, which also relate to the various space activities and increasing the engagement of the European Union for the various parts. Of course, this means that the agency also, EUSPA, is engaged more and more into the various activities. Now, when it comes to budget, because on one side we have the intent, and on the other side we have the budget, which is the engine in bringing things forward. We can look at the last programmatic period where the budget of the Union for space is 14.8 billion. It's a little bit more because later on there was one more program which was added, which was IRIS. But this budget in the programmatic period 2021-2027 was a huge increase from the previous programmatic period, which was only 5 billion the time between 2004-2013 and 2014-2021, it was 11 billion. So we see a progression in the increase of the budget, and hopefully we will have a further increase of the EU budget in the next programmatic period after 2028. When we look, though, at the EU budget in comparison to other budgets, for example, in the United States, we will see that the budget just of NASA for 2022 was 24 billion euros. But of course, in the EU budget, we also have to see it including the budget of ESA, the budget of the member states as well. But still, we need to make a bigger step in order to look into the future. Now, when it comes to governance in space, then through the Lisbon Treaty and since 2021 with the EU Space Programme and the creation of EUSPA, we see three actors engaging overall. It's the European Commission, the European Union Agency for the Space Programme, and the European Space Agency, which establish the appropriate relations, as mentioned in the Lisbon Treaty, with the Financial Framework Partnership Agreement, and continue to collaborate for the benefit of the European Union and its member states. Now let's look into detail on the EU Space Programme of 2021-2027. So as I said at the beginning, until then we had initiatives which in 2021, they were all brought under the same part, but always having in mind and keeping in mind that the citizens of the Union are at the heart of the activities of the Union, also when it comes to space. And the EU Space Programme, bringing these activities under a single umbrella, with different pillars. It consists of the navigation pillar with EGNOS and Galileo, Galileo being the European Union navigation system, which today every single mobile phone sold worldwide is Galileo, has Galileo inside. EGNOS is the augmentation system of the Union for navigation. Then we have the component of Earth observation, which is basically bringing in different satellites as well as non-space data in a very comprehensive system with different services, and I will go through them so you can have an overview from our side. And then the next pillar is telecommunications, with GovSatcom, which brings together existing capabilities of the member states and sharing them among them. And I will tell you a bit more also how it works. and IRIS, which is the new constellation the Union is preparing to build to enhance the existing capabilities that are there. And the last pillar is space situational awareness, which consists of space surveillance and tracking, space weather, and near-Earth objects. The European Union Agency for the Space Program is engaged in all components of the EU space program with different roles, and we will see them a little bit more in detail as we go through the presentation. Now, Galileo. Us as Europeans, we can be very proud that Galileo is the best system in the world. It has higher accuracy today than GPS, than GLONASS and Baidu. So it is a system which has broad coverage. And also we have EGNOS, which is the augmentation system of Europe, which takes the GPS and enhances it into the European Union for better provision of services. EGNOS services are already operational in agriculture since 2009, since 2011 in aviation, and since 2024 in maritime. And we're currently working in the preparation for services for rail, making ERTMS, for example, for those that come from the rail, accessible across Europe. Galileo is a system which is delivering services since December 2016, and we are building and releasing the services one by one, and I will highlight some of them here. You see the overview of the services we have, which is on one side is the open service, which is free and open access. Then we have the public regulated services, which is reserved for governmental actors, and it is an encrypted system designed for greater robustness, availability, and service continuity. Then we have search and rescue, which I will explain also a little bit more in detail for those that are in distress. We have the high accuracy service, and we have emerging and warning satellite services. I will tell you a little bit more about that as well. And OSNMA, which is navigation, message, and authentication, which is delivering authenticated services. So this is the overview, and I will highlight some of them in the next slides. So when we look at search and rescue, all systems, they contribute to what is called the COSPAR-SARSAT. So it basically means that if someone is in distress, for example, at sea, they can send a distress signal, which this distress signal goes to the satellite, and from there, it arrives to the mission control centers. The difference of Galileo compared to all the other navigation systems is that today is the only system which is able to provide a return link, which means that once a signal of distress is received, then in the center, then they can inform the people that they have received it and they're helping and they're sending help. So from this graphic, I will show you afterwards a video, and I will tell you a little bit more how it works. And this is very important for psychological reasons for those that are in distress. So you can see someone, for example, is sailing at sea, and an accident can happen, and this person can fall overboard, and is holding this beacon. We will see him trying to grab the beacon to send the distress signal, which is sending his actual location when the accident happened. To the Galileo satellites. The Galileo satellite receives this signal, which is sent, and it's immediately going to the Rescue and Coordination Center. And the Rescue and Coordination Center, once they receive it, they send the maritime forces or military forces, whoever is responsible for reacting in the different countries, in order to try to go and find the person and help them. And you can see return link activated, so they inform the person that help is coming. And this is very important for psychological reasons for those who are in distress, to receive a message that help is coming, so that they hang on in order to wait until help comes. This saves a lot of lives in the coast of the European Union and across, with this possibility with the search and rescue, and in particularly helping and informing them that help is coming with the return signal. So then when it comes to another service which we're currently building, and it will be operational soon, is to use this capability of the return link of the Galileo satellites in order to send messages in case of disasters. So typically when a disaster is taking place with fire, earthquake, floods, the first system that falls down is the terrestrial telecommunication systems. And today we usually send these messages with 112 through the terrestrial networks. And if they're down, it is difficult to communicate with the population. So using the Galileo return link, we will have the possibility to send information to the people regarding the alerts which are coming with floods, etc. And here on the right-hand side, you see a nice image of some tests we did with the disaster centers in Romania, but we've done it in many different member states now, and soon this service will also be operational. Another important service that is already operational is the Galileo navigational message authentication, which is basically important when it comes to not to know exactly that when you receive the signal, it is the right signal, it is authenticated, and it is not sent by someone else pretending that it is, let's say, someone else. And in particularly in areas where we have difficulties, a lot of spoofing and jamming takes place. So the Galileo message authentication is very important. And this is operational, and it is now used in a number of activities. Let's move now to Earth observation. Copernicus is the most complete system in the world. It combines data from space, from air, as well as ground, and provides different services with atmosphere, maritime, land, climate change, security, and emergency services. Member states activate that on a very regular basis to receive mapping on different activities, but also all the other ones as well. The role of EUSPA in Copernicus is because there are many entrusted entities, including ESA, EUMETSAT, as well as others. There is the role of the European Union Agency for the Space Program is to support in the commercialization of the Copernicus data. So we help and support SMEs to develop and build different services based on that data. Now, when it comes to, we move to another area, the telecommunications area, satellite communications. So the European Union is bringing together through GovSatcom, as it is called, secure governmental satellite communications, the different capabilities the different member states have for by pooling and sharing these capabilities and providing them to the different governmental users. How does this work? You can see here, EUSPA is the one that has built the GovSatcom hub. And the hub is bringing together the existing capabilities of the member states. There are today 5 member states who have governmental satellite capabilities. This is France, Italy, Germany, Luxembourg, and Greece. They bring together their capabilities in a common pool, and they can share it with all the different member states. And how do they receive the services? They receive it through a governmental authority. These can be used for different purposes. We have, there are a number of member states who have already activated it and use it. The first one was Cyprus a couple of weeks ago, and there are many others that have followed. But EUSPA is then in this way very close to the users. We also I took this slide also to show our Commissioner Kubilius, who was having a teleconference with the Greek Minister of Defense through also through the Greek national system, also bringing together frigates which were in the area of the Middle East in a teleconference. It's EUSPA is taking care of the broader network of the users and engage with them on the different activities, onboarding them and providing the different services. So when it comes to IRIS will be the infrastructure for resilience, interconnection, security by satellite. It will be an additional system, satellite system for the Union, multi-orbit, and this will also provide these services through the GovSatcom hub once it is built and it is available. Now, EUSPA also is responsible for the front desk of space surveillance and tracking, the EUSST. As we have activities increasing in space, it's very important to be able to observe and see what is happening. And in particular, the services that are provided through the EUSST is collision avoidance if there is a risk of collision through the in space, then the spacecrafts are informed. Re-entry analysis, in the previous slide you saw analysis of potential debris from a Chinese rocket coming down and looking where it might fall. So this is the re-entry analysis, but also fragmentation analysis, providing breakups and determination of what happens in case of fragmentation. How does this work? Today, the EUSST partnership has got 19 member states. It is the member states that have the sensors. They have optical ground stations, lasers, and radars. And the European Union Agency for the Space Program is the front desk, which engages with the users. And the services are provided through the different member states and through their assets. The partnership has been growing throughout the years. So recently, we welcomed a number of different members with a totality of 19 today. Also, when it comes to service provision, there are many more organizations which they join the request to receive the data from the EUSST, and with different type of satellites being informed. Already these numbers that you see here are already much bigger than in this slide. So far, I have told you about the European Union Space Program, about the different services that are provided. Let me tell you a little bit about the European Union Agency for the Space Program itself, which in reality is a new agency since 2021, but its history starts already from 2002 with different names and different transformations. In 2002, it started with the beginning when the Union decided for its autonomy to develop Galileo, to have its own navigation system. And they set up the so-called joint undertaking in 2002. Then in 2004, there was the supervisory authority with a public-private partnership. In 2008, the public-private partnership failed and the Union took over completely the development of the Galileo program, and created at that time the European GNSS agency, which was a decentralized agency, and member states bid to host this agency, and it was the Czech Republic and here in Prague that became our host country since 2010. And then in 2021, as mentioned, the space regulation created the EU Agency for the Space Program, took over what was there from the GSA, which was only focused in navigation, and then expanded in all the EU Space Program components. And of course, in the future, as we will evolve, the agency will evolve as well in engaging more and more into various space activities. So EUSPA started in Prague in 2010, but today it has become a multi-sited agency. I'm here at the EUSPA headquarters, but we have a site in the Netherlands with a Galileo Reference Center. We have two sites for a Galileo Security Monitoring Center, which are operating 24/7, one in France and a backup in Spain, another site in Spain with a Galileo Service Center, and the EGNOS Center in Toulouse. And we also have offices in Brussels in order to coordinate and work together with the EU institutions. EUSPA today has about 320 staff, double with the number of contractors that we have. And its budget is split into core and delegated budget. And I want to highlight here that our delegated budget is 9.5 billion. How does this relate? If we take into consideration that the EU space program for this programmatic period is 14.5 billion, 9.5 is delegated to EUSPA, from which about half EUSPA further delegates into the European Space Agency to build space assets for the European Union. When it comes to governance and our operations, we have two boards, the EUSPA Administrative Board, and then it's the Executive Director. And we have on the other side the Security Accreditation Board, where EUSPA is responsible for the security accreditation of all the EU space components. And there the member states are sitting with representatives for security-related matters. And there is the Security Accreditation Board chair, and let's say in this board managing the different activities. Also in our bodies, we have the European Commission, the European Parliament, the Council, as well as the High Representative, our External Action Service. So EUSPA's mission is under three pillars: exploitation, security, and utilization. What does exploitation mean? It means that we are doing the service provision of the Galileo and EGNOS. We're building the GovSatcom hub, and we're operating the EUSST front desk. So then the second pillar is security. In security, we have three distinct activities. We have the operational security, including the cryptography, cybersecurity, threat analysis, risk analysis. We have security operations with 24/7 monitoring of our activities. And we have the Security Accreditation Board, where the Security Accreditation Board is responsible for the security accreditation of all EU space program components. And I will talk a little bit more about also the ISAC and the EU Space Academy, which were mentioned in the EU Space Strategy for Security and Defense. And of course, there is the Council decision CD698, which when the Union is threatened, that I mentioned before, then the agency is engaged into ensuring the security related parts and engaging with the Council for these matters. Then when it comes to the Security Accreditation Board, a little bit more in detail, taking things from the regulation itself, you can see that they're responsible for the security accreditation of all the components. And these tasks are taken up by the Security Accreditation Board chair. The member states are very much involved into the security accreditation process, and there is a cooperation between the executive director and the sub-chair. We have the last period set up an European Union agency, ISAC, Information Sharing and Analysis Center for Space, as it was mentioned in the EU Strategy for Security and Defense. And what is the idea there is to bring together industry and different entities to exchange on potential threats which are there for space activities. The third pillar is the utilization. This is more the market uptake. And for that, what do? We do market intelligence. We support SMEs. We support startups and innovators, and we promote different synergies. And for that, we have a number of different implementation programs in order to provide and support development of different type of technologies across the different spectrum, and also support the Commission with the Cassini in order to provide also funds for entrepreneurs and startups. So when we went through the presentation, I talked that the Union focuses a lot in using space as an enabler for its sectorial policies and the different type of policies that are there. Now, this means that space is part of the data provision. We can use space data, air data, ground data, and that can be navigation, Earth observation, etc. Brings it into the so-called big data, and then the information is provided for the different policies. Let's look a little bit at the space and maritime. So when we are combining different type of information from space, we get a bit of a better view. Here, every single boat is obliged to send AIS signals regarding their location. And this is what we see in the picture with the white spots. If we follow these white spots, then we get the green spots, which they give us following that the route that they take. And we also see, if we combine it with Earth observation data, we get these red dots where we see that there are some vessels, for example, which are not sending an AIS signal. For example, they have switched it off, and there we know that they might be conducting illegal activities. So combining different type of space data gives us a better and bigger picture, which is important for different reasons, be it security matters, be it also route optimization, where we can, the maritime sector is one of the largest producers of CO2. And by looking at different routes and doing route optimization, we can also have the possibility to reduce CO2 emissions. Another part in the area of maritime is also to look at, for example, fishing cages. This is a large market for providing fish as in the food industry, but also we need to know what is the health around these vessels, but also we also need to have to monitor the different type of vessels and assure that they receive accurate authentication and position. And also we talked already about search and rescue. So we also have, for example, an agreement with the European Fisheries Control Agency. It's an interagency collaboration where we are supporting them with space technologies and applications for supporting the fisheries control authorities and work together with them. So overall, another part that space can help, it's also, and this is, we said also that the maritime sector, there are services for positioning and navigation, for better pilotage, for example, in order to have, to getting into ports in a better and safer way, and overall into the automation, which might become more and more also in the future. Another element is environment and climate. By looking from above, we have the possibility to look at disasters, to look at water monitoring, to look at levels of height and quality of water. in particularly in the area of disaster throughout the entire cycle, as we see more and more climate changes with higher temperatures, with more floods, with more movement of the ground equivalently. Is important to have preparedness and response, recovery, and mitigation through the entire cycle. And space can help. So all space components can support Galileo with the positioning, GovSatcom, as we said, it's important to provide, to give the possibility for connectivity, Copernicus, but also through humanitarian aid to ensure that there is safe routes. We also, in support of Ukraine, developed some activities for using space, EU space, to support humanitarian aid, but also, of course, with border surveillance. Space is very, very important and critical. So overall, our role as EUSPA and is to bring together the different components of space for different market segments, namely 15 market segments. Everything from agriculture, tourism, health, security and defense to provide the different services. And if you want to know more about the market reports that we have, which they also look at the evolution of the different of the engagement of space for Earth observation, GNSS, but also telecommunication, to the various markets, please visit our website and look at the QR codes and see also what space can further bring. We also have a collaboration with UNOSA in how the EU space can support the 8 billion people place in the world, and also how it can support the Sustainable Development Goals. And if you want to learn even more, we have over the past years been developing the EU Space Academy, which is a learning platform. It's a learning platform for individuals, for startups, for entrepreneurs. So you can find things more there. Now, as we are coming to the last part of the presentation, I want to tell you a little bit about what we have in front of us, what is coming up next. And overall, as we said so far, space contributes to the EU agenda for different parts, for a stronger and more secure Europe, a Europe that has a greater strategic autonomy and non-dependence in space, for green transition, for digital transition, for ensuring our competitiveness and bringing in more innovation-friendly environment. And there are different things which have been which are being built since 2021, be it the space traffic management is something that the EU had put an approach for space traffic management, and also in particular already mentioned the EU space strategy for security and defense in responding to different space threats, in building and using space for security and defense, and preserving a responsible behavior in space. In 2024, we got a new commission for 2024-2029 with different priorities which were highlighted there, where also space can support. And also there is a new focus on a new era for European defense and security, for different things in terms of space, for quality of life and food security, water security, looking into the global challenges that are there, and also to prepare the Union for the future, a competitive Union. And we have a new commissioner for the first time. The Union in the new commission has a commissioner for space and defense, Commissioner Kubilius, and in his letter, which he received from President, it was to focus on the EU space strategy for security and defense, to promote a stronger and innovative space industry, to deliver on the existing components of the EU space for Galileo, EGNOS, Copernicus, GovSatcom, and IRIS, to continue coordinating and cooperating with the European Space Agency, but also to bring on the table a proposal for EU space law. It was saying in the letter, today we have on the table an EU Space Act, and to further build on European Union standards and rules for space activities, and also to propose a space data economy strategy, which has already been proposed by the Commission. So in front of us, more legislative texts which are open, including the Space Act, including the next programmatic period for financing. And also recently, we have a new regulation for the European, for EUSPA, with European Union Services Agency, which is also part of the legislative procedure, which has started. So stay tuned, many more things on the road ahead. And with that, I would like to close the presentation and thank you very much for your attention. So Jana, back to you for any questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Christina. Thank you for your insightful and comprehensive presentation.